Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into the epic climax of the original Mistborn trilogy to unpack the mind-blowing mechanics behind Scadrial's final transformation. If you'd read Brandon Sanderson's epic saga, you already know the ending is this absolute masterpiece of long-term foreshadowing. It brilliantly ties together complex magic systems, cosmic lore, and some deeply emotional character arcs. But there are layers to this conclusion that completely change how we view the entire series, and we're going to break them all down.
So let's dive into this massive mystery that Sanderson set up so perfectly. Think about it. For 3 whole books, we were absolutely convinced that Vin, this incredible street urchin turned Mistborn, was the prophesied savior of Scadrial. We were right there with her through all her struggles and immense growth. But what if the true hero of ages was actually hiding in plain sight from literal page 1?
All right, let's set the stage with Section 1, the cosmic chess match.
To really grasp the genius of the ending, we have to zoom way, way out and look at the grand cosmic chess match that created the world itself. Long before the Lord Ruler, or Vin, there were 2 godlike beings who stumbled upon an empty star system. This beautifully illustrates the fundamental duality of the universe. On one hand, you have preservation, originally held by a being named Laras, whose core intent is to maintain existence and create. On the other, you have ruin, held by Aki, who is completely driven by entropy and destruction. They struck a cosmic bargain to create Scadrial and give its people conscious life. Preservation actually gave up a little extra of himself to grant humanity sapience and free will. But, in exchange, Ruin was promised that eventually he would get to destroy the whole thing. Preservation creates, Ruin ends. Honestly, it seemed like a fair deal at the time.
And you can see exactly how this cosmic bargain trickles down into Scadrial's magic systems. You have Allomancy drawing from preservation, and the incredibly bloody art of Hemalurgy drawing from ruin. But right there in the dead center, you have Feruchemy, the magic of the Terrace people. It exists as the ultimate neutral balance between those 2 opposing cosmic forces. Keep that in mind, because that concept of balance is absolutely crucial for how the entire trilogy resolves.
But here's the catch. Preservation never actually intended to let Ruin destroy their creation. Because Lyras knew Ruin would eventually come to collect on their bargain and annihilate the world, he betrayed Oishi. He sacrificed his own mind to build a massive metaphysical supermax prison known as the Well of Ascension, trapping Ruin's consciousness and stopping him from acting directly on the world.
Which brings us to Section 2, the corrupted prophecies.
So a trapped god is still, well, a god. And this is how the entire world was deceived for a millennium, with Ruin manipulating literally everyone from the shadows. Here's the wild part. Ruin subtly twisted the Terrace prophecies. Turns out, the god of destruction was also a highly malevolent cosmic copy editor. Even while locked away in the well, Ruin could influence unstable minds, and far more terrifyingly, he could alter any text that wasn't engraved in metal. Over centuries, he painstakingly rewrote Preservation's original prophecies. He orchestrated this massive, sweeping deception just to trick the so-called Hero of Ages into releasing the power at the Well of Ascension, rather than using it to reinforce the prison. He tricked Elend, he tricked the whole world, and eventually he tricked Vin into setting him free. But when you strip away all of Ruin's manipulations, the uncorrupted prophecies left behind by Preservation painted a very different picture of the savior than the young, female warrior we all assumed it was. The text actually used gender-neutral terms, implying someone who is neither male nor female. The hero would be rejected by their own people, and they wouldn't be a warrior by trade, though they'd be forced to fight anyway. They wouldn't be born a king, but would become one. Just look at these traits. That absolutely does not describe Vin, but it describes someone else perfectly.
Let's move on to Section 3, a devastating final sacrifice.
Before we reveal exactly who fits that prophecy mold, we have to talk about how this cosmic deception inevitably leads to the heartbreaking emotional climax of the series. With Ruin freed, the world is literally ending under a blanket of ash. And that final battle, it's a total masterclass in tension. Vin is fighting this impossible uphill battle, completely outmatched. But then, a heavily spiked and controlled Marsh manages to push through Ruin's grip for just a split second to rip out Vin's earring. That earring was actually a hemalurgic spike, which is of Ruin, and it was literally blocking her from fully connecting with Preservation. With it gone, the mist just flood into Vin, granting her the full power of a god. But right as she ascends, her husband Elend falls in battle against Marsh. Driven by utter grief, Vin uses her newfound power to sacrifice herself, completely annihilating Ruin's vessel, Ati, in the process. The loss of Elend sparks this pure emotional rage within Vin, which prompts a question I know agonized so many of us while reading. Why did this beloved couple have to die? After literally everything they fought for, why couldn't they live to see the world they saved?
Well, as a lot of astute readers, and even the characters themselves, pointed out, Vin was built as a warrior for a world of war. She spent her entire life as a street urchin, an assassin, and finally a weapon of mass destruction holding a fractured empire together. She struggled immensely with peacetime politics. An assassin turned queen simply wouldn't fit into the peaceful democratic transition that they were fighting to build. On top of that, Elend was Vin's anchor to the world. His death completely severed her ties to the living. Think about it. If Elend had survived, Vin would have wanted to live, and she would have basically remained trapped in a stalemate as the new vessel of preservation. She needed that blinding, level-headed rage to make the suicidal attack required to permanently eliminate Eladi. And purely on a structural level, both shards needed to be left completely without a vessel for the true hero of ages to step up. The craziest part is, when the dust finally settles, Sazed actually heals their physical bodies. He offers them a legitimate chance to return to life, but they make the choice to pass on together into the beyond. It's deeply tragic, sure, but also perfectly peaceful. They both knew their continued existence, especially with Vin holding immense godlike power, would only complicate the very world they fought so hard to protect. The takeaway here is profound, you know? Sometimes, the ultimate victory for a hero isn't surviving, it's knowing when to step aside and let peace reign. Which brings us to Section 4, the true hero revealed. Okay, so with both shards of preservation and ruin now just floating around without vessels, the ultimate plot twist of the entire series finally unfolds on that ash-covered battlefield. Sazed suddenly realizes that Ruin had ignored one single, seemingly meaningless line of prophecy. Ruin changed almost everything to manipulate the world, but he totally missed the importance of this specific phrase. The hero of ages will hold the future of the world in his arms. And guys, this is Sanderson's foreshadowing at its absolute peak. As a terrace keeper, Sazed literally carried the future of the world physically on his arms inside his copper mines. Think back to those uncorrupted prophecies. Sazed was a eunuch, perfectly fitting the gender-neutral phrasing. Talk about ultimate plot armor, right? He was rejected by the Terra Synod for fighting with Kelsier's crew. He was a scholar, definitely not a warrior, but he fought anyway. And he certainly wasn't born a king. It was staring us in the face the whole time. Sazed was the hero all along.
Let's look at the fallout in Section 5, the birth of harmony.
That incredible revelation paves the way for Sazed to step into a role literally no one saw coming, permanently altering the entire landscape of the Cosmere. Surrounded by the white mists of preservation and the dark power of ruin, Sazed takes up both shards simultaneously. Because he's a feruchemist, a magic system that literally represents the ultimate neutral balance between creation and destruction, Sazed is uniquely qualified to absorb both wildly opposing powers without being completely destroyed by them. He merges them, becoming an entirely new entity, harmony. This is where Sazed's tragic, lifelong obsession with dead religions and forgotten history finally pays off in the most spectacular way. Tapping into literally everything stored in his copper mines, Sazed uses his hoarded knowledge of pre-ascension religions, star charts, and science to perfectly rebuild a thriving world. He fixes all the messy mistakes the Lord Ruler made 1,000 years prior. He moves the planet back into its proper orbit, brings back the blue sky and green plants, and heals human physiology. He quite literally bears the future of the world on his arms, using the past to build a brand new Scadrial. But, as you can imagine, becoming a god of balance isn't exactly a walk in the park. Holding two vastly opposing cosmic intents creates a very volatile reality. This is beautifully symbolized by Harmony's physical god metal, Harmonium, which we later know as Et metal in Era 2. Unlike Lerasium or Adium, Harmonium is highly reactive. It violently explodes when exposed to water purely because its two aspects, preservation and ruin, are constantly fighting each other on a molecular level. And that internal molecular conflict is mirrored directly in Sazed's own mind. Sazed quickly discovers that holding both of these intents makes even the absolute simplest decisions agonizingly difficult. If he acts to preserve, he causes stagnation. But if he allows ruin, he causes unnecessary loss. He gets locked in this state of divine paralysis, which ultimately forces him to step back and rely on mortal agents like Waxilium and Mistborn Era 2, instead of just taking direct action himself. Which brings us to a terrifying, kind of overlooked fragment of the Terrace prophecies. It's a line that heavily hints Sazed's struggle for balance might actually be a losing battle. The text reads, "His name being Discord, and they shall love him for it." Leaving us with a really haunting realization to wrap up on. Sazed saved the world by embodying balance, but as the pressures of the expanding Cosmere mount and the opposing intents of ruin and preservation continue to just war within him, is the ultimate savior of Scadrial actually destined to become its greatest future threat? It's a brilliant, open-ended question that completely changes how you read Brandon Sanderson's universe moving forward. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you read.